Ghost stories are part of every culture and predate recorded history. Ghosts are traditionally thought to be the spirit of a person who, rather than pass into the next world, choose to linger in this one for a time. Often the reason for this is thought to be because of the possibility of some traumatic occurrence leading to the person's death, which prevented them from finding a peaceful passing into the next realm. Some very well-known and very well-respected people have claimed to have witnessed ghostly and haunted phenomena. Harry S. Truman stated on a national talk show that he witnessed the ghost of Abraham Lincoln in the White House on no less than 3 occasions. The White House's Lincoln and Queen's bedroom are said to be haunted, the latter by the rambunctious spirit of Andrew Jackson, who is heard laughing and swearing loudly. Other places of renown, such as London's Tower of London, Hampton Court Palace, and the Theatre Royal on Drury Lane, are all said to be venues for many spirited events. It seems that everyone knows someone that has had a ghostly experience or knows of a haunted place in their own town. One of our most beloved holidays has a popular ghost story built into it. However, it seems that with all our modern noise, brilliant lights, and otherwise high traffic in urban areas as well as rural schemes, that the number of visits from those who might have slipped through the veil is much less than for those before us. Still, there are the occasional events. Most hauntings fall into the residual category. This is to say, the entity does not seem to interact with the environment or the people around them. This sort of haunting often manifests in the sounds of footsteps, sounds of breathing, or a visual representation that on occasion seems to repeat time and again, sometimes over the course of years, as if like a movie reel looped in a repeating manner. And there are poltergeists who seem to interact with the occupants of homes in which a young woman, usually under age 20, resides. Oftentimes, these entities seem to have a malevolent intent and never seem to reveal their former identities. Many times, personal items move or are thrown around a room or disappear altogether. A poltergeist haunting even may last for months or even years and usually end as abruptly as they begin. Interestingly enough, cases are documented in which poltergeist events cease as soon as psychological intervention is made on behalf of the young female subject in question. This spawns the theory that the manifestation is a focused form of PK energy that the subject has unknowingly projected. This is something we'll delve into a little deeper another time. While typical hauntings seem to be linked to a location, poltergeists are linked to individuals and can travel with the individual. Another form of haunting is the intelligent haunting, where the entity has a benevolent intent or energy and can seemingly interact with the people within a specific location. It is surmised that the entity may be trying to communicate a need to those who live in its domain, or may be seeking company from residents where it dwells. Occasionally, there are unusual photographs that, when developed, show mists or human shapes appearing out of thin air. Recently, paranormal investigators have turned to a new form of sonic capture device and voice recorders which can record signals which were not heard live at the time of the recording. The fact that these disembodied voices fall in the 0 kHz to 300 kHz spectrum beyond what a human voice can reach is what makes this phenomenon most fascinating. Over the years, there have been such eerie tales such as the story of the screaming skull, which is believed to emanate otherworldly sounds if attempts were ever made to remove it from its home domicile. And there are countless stories of the haunted houses and haunted cemeteries. There's even a story about a railroad crossing in San Antonio where an ill-fated group of grade schoolers happened to have the misfortune of riding a bus that collided with a freight train, leaving no survivors. Locals say that even today, if you park your car on the tracks and put your car in neutral, that it will be moved from the tracks by mysterious force. And if you place baby powder on your trunk and hood, that small fingerprints will be left without any logical explanation. It seems that there are no end to the legends that come from Europe and most notably Britain, where Herne the Hunter, also known as the Wild Huntsman of Windsor's Great Park, was spotted as recently as 1976. Even the French Revolution was marked by the frightful visit of ghost riders in the sky, bearing an omen of doom, who were witnessed by an entire town on the eve of the great political transformation. There is also the belief that animals bear witness to ghostly events, and stories have been related which convey the feelings that pets can sense an entity even before their owners, such as horses who have been attributed the trait of some sort of extra sixth sense. There are even stories of ghostly pets who died but didn't leave. Far away across the oceans, many sailors and fishermen consider a sighting of birds which ceaselessly fly around the ships and boats are the souls of the damned, and a flock of white seagulls are the spirits of deceased seamen seeking their family graves. A popular urban legend in Missouri surrounds the appearance of a large black dog who often appears headless and appears to cattle, hunters, or evening travelers. In Tansy County, Missouri, there is a legend of a ghostly white buck that awaits hunters to kill the beast at their own peril. Legend states that any person who makes an attempt to kill the beast will soon die in his stead. A mere sighting of this creature is considered an omen of disaster, and this type of ominous ghostly omen trait is related to human spirits as well, as in the tale of Marceline, Missouri's white lady who once haunted a cafe, once an old railroad depot, and seemed to predict the death of an individual by manifesting and pointing a ghostly finger at them. Ghosts have intrigued established men of science as well. In the early 1900s, a French neurologist believed he could capture the human body's spiritual energy, which he called the vital current, on film. So zealous that he took photos of both his wife and his son at the moments of their passing. Startling are the photos which depict what seems to be orbs of light or energy leaving the bodies. In the series of photos taken as his wife expired were 3 orbs which then seemed to merge into one before leaving the frame.
I was fortunate as a teenager to have been invited to the home of a respected church deacon and his wife. These were grandparents who claimed to have had many mysterious events, such as curtains and curtain rods being removed from their fixtures, and ghostly sounds in the form of footsteps in their nearly century-old home in rural Pulaski County. Several members of their family claimed to have had such experiences over a period of decades. I observed no paranormal activity upon my visit, but the opportunity to learn firsthand that people of deep religious faith also have such unconventional experiences made the opportunity worthwhile for me. Previously, my experiences with ghostly phenomenon were limited. Once on an occasion, I happened to be out after dark in a large plot of woods owned by my family, and I witnessed what appeared to be floating green candles, which I am led to believe was actually phosphorus gases being emitted from the ground and ignited by static electricity. How this would explain how these ghostly candles were moving as if they were being carried by invisible entities, I do not know.
Such stories of mysterious floating lights or orbs, not to be mistaken with the orbs that appear in photographs taken in haunted homes that are found usually off the beaten trail, are quite common. One is the decades-old story of the ball of light that travels along the tracks at the L&N Railroad crossing west of Chapel Hill, Tennessee. One man recounted being paralyzed momentarily after the light passed through his body.
Fairly recently, we returned from a trip to the Carolinas. North Carolina has at least 2 legends about ghostly lights that we've become acquainted with. One takes place in Mako, North Carolina, is accompanied by a legend of a train conductor by the name Joe Baldwin, who lost his head one evening, 3 minutes to midnight in 1867. But when we visited the Blue Ridge Mountains, we were treated to the rare appearance of the Brown Mountain Lights, which emanate from Table Rock as you sit across on another range looking out the site. We witnessed the lights flashing quite brilliantly and soon noticed that they were fixed in 5 to 7 places on the rock. This time the legend states that the lights are a one-time slave searching with a lantern for his master who has disappeared. At one time, local resident Ralph Lale claimed to have developed telepathic communication with the lights. Supposedly, the lights lured him into a cave in the side of the Brown Mountain where he was greeted by aliens who took him on a round-trip excursion to Venus, where he met a beautiful alien girl named Norma.
Missouri's most popular haunt is by far none other than the anomaly known as the Hornet Spook Light, located off of I-44 in Joplin, Missouri. This light has been viewed by hundreds of curious individuals since 1866. Although there are local legends tied into the spook light phenomenon, the light was investigated by the Army Corps of Engineers in 1946, who concluded that the light is a mysterious light of unknown origin. Our tax dollars hard at work once again. We'll revisit the phenomenon of mysterious lights again in our next episode when we approach the topic of unidentified flying objects.
Another paranormal event, which I have also experienced, is often attributed to ghostly visitation, but is not as common in the USA as it is in other parts of the world, notably Asia. There they refer to the phenomenon as oppression. Here it has a more ominous name, the Devil's Hold. On one occasion when I was staying in a very popular old hotel on Long Island, New York, I decided to take a late afternoon nap. On most days I might sleep for an hour or 2 at the most. For some reason, on this day I experienced something unlike anything before or after that day. I seemed to have a sensation of someone pushing down on my chest and the feeling that someone or something was creating a great weight bearing down upon my body. Even more strange, I sensed the presence of people walking around the room and standing all around my bed. Some experts call this experience sleep paralysis, and rationalize the sensations of having been conjured by the subconscious during the semi-awake, semi-asleep state. But in other, older cultures, this experience would best be described as a visitation from one's own ancestors.
And when I woke up, I like that, and I was completely paralyzed. I could not move. I had a tingling sensation throughout my entire body, and I felt like I had 600 pounds sitting on top of me. I could open my eyes, but I could not move my head. I could not move my body at all. It was completely tingling from my head to my toe, almost like a falling asleep sensation. I don't know. It was really weird.
Recently, we decided to investigate a few locations which were touted as among the most haunted in the Ozarks as well. Eureka Springs harbors stories of hauntings, unusual occurrences, and the notoriety of having been visited at one time or another by such infamous characters as Jesse James and the Dalton Gang, Pretty Boy Floyd and Al Capone, and there are even fables of floating orbs, translucent women, and flying pool cues, as one pamphlet states. Our trip took us to both the popular Crescent Hotel and Basin Park Hotel. Both are known for their ghostly histories. The Crescent Hotel is under continued renovations but still has a charm all its own. You can take a daily ghost tour of the Crescent for $15, and digital cameras are encouraged. Some of the most prominent entities include a schoolgirl who jumped from a high location in order to commit suicide, Dr. Baker himself and one of his nurses, a departed hotel cleaning lady, a stone worker, a child that fell down the stairs to her death, some young conservatory women, and even the apparition of a cat named Morse. We ourselves had no unusual experiences. However, the odd angles featured in the room design gave me something of a spooky feeling. The following night, we stayed at the Basin Park Hotel. Once again, we had the good fortune of a peaceful night's rest. We decided that we liked the Basin better with its bigger room and view of the old downtown district, which is now filled up with all types of specialty shops. The room itself had many fixtures that remind me of the 1930s, perhaps reminisce of some old gangster movie. All in all, we recommend that everyone visit this quaint little Victorian town situated atop the mountains of northwestern Arkansas, if only to see the collection of fairy tale-like businesses and homes. We hear that municipal codes state that all structures built in the historic district must be built to meet the aesthetic sensibility of that section of town. Even the local McDonald's has the look of some storybook cottage.
Springfield, Missouri is the home of the Pythian Castle. Its history goes back some 90 years and was utilized at one time by the military and held prisoners of war. It also once functioned as an orphanage. It could be considered the most haunted location in Springfield, as many paranormal groups and individuals have captured various anomalies in photo and EVP recordings. Many have also heard disembodied voices, male and female, and felt dramatic changes in temperature. Some have run into an invisible mass while exploring the structure. Others have heard breathing sounds up close and personal. Boxes and doors seemingly move on their own power. Oddly, the anomalies seem to increase as the number of children at the site increases. The Pythian Castle will be featured on a Sci-Fi Network miniseries on Halloween. Ghost tours and a ghost hunting workshop are available.
That they've taken out of here have had faces in them, that they can actually see faces in the orbs. And one lady took a picture and they were videoing it, and they said it looked like the orb was waltzing in the ballroom, and it stopped. So the other couple went out and started waltzing, and started waltzing again. And she said it looks like it's a waltzing orb, you know, just kind of waltzing around. Yeah, they're totally different. You never know what they're about to get or when.
I have visited the Pythian Castle on 2 occasions. On the first occasion, I brought along my video camera while my friends Anthony and Deanna took still digital pictures. I captured nothing out of the ordinary. My friends got nothing on their camera either, until they took a photo of me on a staircase leading to the upper floor. There's no explanation why the photo they took of me shows me surrounded by orbs, while there wasn't a single orb or other anomaly in any other photograph taken on the premises that night.
St. Augustine, Florida is America's oldest city. It's also considered by some to be America's most haunted city. The St. Augustine Lighthouse was featured on an episode of the Ghost Hunters TV show. It is one of the very few locations which was rich with paranormal activity. The investigative team on the program TAPS captured video inside of the lighthouse near the top of 2 anomalies. It appeared on tape just as it appeared to the naked eye of the investigators as a flying shadow. The other anomaly could be described as nothing less than a human-like entity peering over the top balcony for a moment, then disappearing into thin air.
Our visit to St. Augustine was very enjoyable. We favor the beach here over other beaches around the East Coast, and the people were very fun and friendly. We did make it to the lighthouse on 2 occasions. The second time was during the day when we made the climb to the top. The first occasion was late the previous night. We took turns taking photos of ourselves standing in front of the lighthouse with 2 different cameras and photo settings in the period of about a minute. Somehow the first photo in sequence on both cameras seemed to capture a very eerie mist, while all the other shots did not.
It seems that although just anybody can go crazy, the wealthy in our society are the ones who have the luxury to stake claims to acute eccentricity. And at the heart of one family of German immigrants' history is the tale of madness that gave way to one of the most persistent hauntings in the country.
Life magazine called the Lemp Mansion in St. Louis, Missouri, now a bed and breakfast, one of the 10 most haunted homes in America. Now, I'm not one to contest. My own experience of the Lemp Mansion was startling. But first, some history.
Johann Adam Lemp immigrated to the U.S. in 1838 and made his living as a grocer until he discovered that the St. Louis cave system would prove effective for producing lager beer. In 1840, he decided to follow his father's footsteps and launch his new enterprise. His change in focus paid off. Soon thereafter, he was one of the wealthiest men in St. Louis, becoming a millionaire many times over. He passed away in 1862 a happy man, never knowing that he would be the last in his family to realize any lasting satisfaction or prosperity from his enterprise. Years later, Johann's son William Lemp helmed the brewery empire until the onset of the Great Depression set in and prohibition laws were set in place. Profits decreased until the enterprise began to decline as swiftly as it previously arose. It was soon thereafter that William's son and heir apparent Frederick died under mysterious circumstances. William committed suicide by shooting himself 3 years later. At this time, William Jr. took over as chief of the failing company. In 1919, the plant was forced to close, and William Jr.'s sister Elsa, considered to be the wealthiest heiress in St. Louis, committed suicide a year later. In June 1922, the Lemp factory, once estimated to be worth $7 million, sold for a paltry $600,000. Although most of the Lemp family's assets were liquidated, they held an almost morbid attachment for their home. After presiding over the sale of the brewery, William Lemp Jr. shot himself in the same location where his father passed 18 years earlier. His son William Lemp III died of a heart attack in 1943. William Jr.'s brother Charles, who had a compulsive fear of germs, remained at the mansion after his brother's suicide until he too used a gun to kill himself and his prized Doberman Pinscher. The body was discovered by his brother Edwin. In 1970, Edwin Lemp died of natural causes at the age of 90. The Lemp Mansion was originally built in the 1860s but was purchased by William J. Lemp for use as a residence and office. Eventually, they turned the mansion into a Victorian showplace, once a residence but now also a place to throw parties for the wealthy set in Old St. Louis. Visitors will notice that the mansion does not have a traditional ballroom because the home had a basement access to a series of caves where they built an auditorium, a ballroom, and a swimming pool. It is also rumored to be the location of bizarre sexual orgies orchestrated by William Jr. at the behest of his wife Lillian, often referred to as the Lavender Lady, who eventually divorced William, bringing about a scandalous media obsession with the couple and the Lemp family in general. The passage to the cave is now sealed, but the kitchen staff still refer to the basement as the Gates of Hell. It is considered one of the 3 most haunted locations in the mansion, along with the central staircase and the attic, where the monkey-faced boy is often spotted looking out of the small window, and where you'll find evidence that he often repositions the toys provided for him by the hotel staff and patrons. William Jr.'s promiscuous behavior is said to have led to the pregnancy of a domestic servant and subsequent birth of his bastard son, the monkey-faced mongoloid boy, who was kept virtually in prison in the servants' quarters for his entire life, which by some accounts did not extend beyond childhood. He is said to have been born with Down syndrome and liked to play around the eaves in the attic. More on that in a moment. When Edwin Lemp died, he left no heirs to the estate. Suffering from the strain of madness that plagued his family, his wishes were that all the family's artworks, which had been purchased on many leisure trips to Italy, be destroyed so that no one could further enjoy them. Family artifacts, as well as some private materials, were also destroyed as to ensure some family secrets would remain so. Eventually, the mansion became a boarding house and then a seedy flop house. It was at this time that the tales of hauntings made their way into the city at large.
Recently, Macy and I spent the weekend at the Lemp Mansion in St. Louis and explored Alton, Illinois. We even stopped off at the site of the infamous Exorcist House in St. Louis. At the Lemp Mansion, we got orbs, to be sure, but we got something else too. We loved the Lemp Mansion, which was situated kitty-corner to a large, beautiful Catholic church in the Anheuser-Busch Brewery. On our first night, we stayed in the Lavender Room. The room was comprised of the bedroom, the breakfast room, and the bathroom, and was altogether larger than most standard hotel rooms, including suites, that we had collectively ever seen. In the middle of the night, I experienced what I believe was a form of sleep paralysis. It was at this time I sensed someone walking through the room, from the bathroom to the breakfast room. And then, although I heard some barking vocalization, I could not actually describe it as being a voice. We spent the second night there on the 3rd floor. which is said to be haunted by the ghost of a small boy. The hotel staff leave toys for the so-called monkey-faced boy ghost in a corner there just outside our room. I situated the toys and took a photo before we retired for the evening. In the middle of the night, I was awakened by what I am positive was the sound of a small child running across the floorboards in the attic. There were no children in this bed and breakfast on this night, and at this time of the night, the doors of the building had been locked for several hours. I leapt to my feet and opened our door to the hallway. Without turning on any lights, I immediately snapped a photo into the hallway and into the direction of the eaves in the corner. As you can see in the photo, not only was one toy moved, but you can see what might be described as a face peering out from behind a wooden fixture. Presently, we are planning to return to the mansion to see what we can capture in the attic with a security camera device fixed in the direction of the haunted corner.
The most famous haunted house in the USA is easily the Dutch colonial home, which sits in the quiet Long Island town of Amityville, New York. The facts are this. On the night of November 13, 1974, Ronald DeFeo Jr., 23, murdered 6 of his family members in the now infamous residence, which has been remodeled and has been given a new street address by village elders to discourage sightseers. Ronald Jr. was high on heroin and in a homicidal rage that became one of Long Island's most horrific events. During the development of the case and the trial, he claimed that voices made him commit the grisly acts. Sometime after the murders, George and Kathy Lutz moved into the house with their 3 children. Within days, they claimed, strange and frightening events started to unfold, which included the appearance of slime on the carpet, strange odors, and eerie sounds within the home. The Lutzes called a priest to bless the home, but the priest was chased out by an entity screaming, "Get out!" A few days later, George found himself captive in his bed by an unseen force, while Kathy was reportedly elevated above hers. At the same time, the children were tormented in their room by strange noises. 28 days after they moved into the house, they fled. The Lutzes later approached an author who penned the popular horror novel The Amityville Horror, which went on to sell millions of copies, and a very profitable movie series eventually took the frightful tale to the mainstream. Although no other residents of the home ever reported unusual events, the Lutzes, who eventually divorced, continued to maintain that their story was true. Today, you can still explore the gruesome tale of the alleged events of the Amityville home at George Lutz's for-profit website, amityvillehorror.com.
Hampton Court Palace. The wives of Henry VIII are said to haunt this castle. Third wife Jane Seymour and fifth wife Catherine Howard are said to make their presence known in the huge Renaissance mansion. When security cameras captured this image of a specter in a robe exiting through a fire door, experts were astonished and claimed it to be authentic. Later, a worker in the establishment came forth as having perpetrated a hoax.
You are looking at the ghost of the bride under the bridge at Phelps Grove Park. Pretty famous Southwest Missouri legend. The rumor goes the bridge was the spot where a bride was killed, and she can be seen just like you see her right now under the bridge. Pretty much every night she's looking for her groom. That's how the story goes.